Welcome to this chapter. I want to begin with a simple thought. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. Think about that for a moment. How many times in your life have you caught yourself saying, I would have succeeded, but they got in my way? Or maybe, things would be different if only they had treated me better. Each time you shift the blame outward, you hand over your power. You give away the keys to your own growth, and you lock yourself into a cycle where nothing changes. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing, and this single truth is one of the hardest but most liberating lessons you will ever learn. The human mind is naturally drawn to self-protection, and one of the easiest ways we protect ourselves is by pointing fingers outward instead of looking inward. Every time we say, they did this to me, or I could have done better if only they hadn't stopped me, we are handing away the steering wheel of our lives. We are telling ourselves that our progress depends not on our choices, but on their mistakes, and that belief is the greatest trap you can fall into, because it leaves you powerless, waiting for others to change, waiting for life to become fair, waiting for circumstances to magically align before you move forward. But the truth is that life rarely gives you fairness, and people rarely live up to your expectations. And if you keep waiting for that perfect alignment, you will stay exactly where you are, stuck in the same cycle of blame and frustration, year after year, while others who choose responsibility move ahead. Now think about how often we hear phrases like, I would be successful if my boss gave me a chance, or I would be happier if my family treated me better, or I would be more confident if people respected me. And notice how all of these statements place power outside of ourselves, as if our growth, our happiness, and our confidence belong to other people and not us. But what happens when you flip the script and say, I will succeed even if my boss doesn't give me a chance, or I will find happiness even if my family doesn't support me, or I will build confidence regardless of whether anyone respects me? Suddenly the power shifts back where it belongs, inside you, and once you understand that, you begin to see that growth is not about controlling others or wishing the world would change. It is about mastering your own responses, building your own mindset, and finding strength even in the face of unfairness. So let me tell you this clearly. The people who thrive in life are not those who avoid problems, but those who take ownership of their role in every situation, those who look at setbacks and ask not, who is to blame, but what can I learn here? How can I grow from this? What is within my control right now? Because when you ask those questions, your brain shifts from passive mode into problem-solving mode, from victimhood into empowerment, and this is the exact training ground of critical thinking. The moment you stop blaming and start analyzing, the moment you stop complaining and start asking better questions, your mind begins to sharpen, your resilience strengthens, and your vision expands. Now let's be real. Life will give you unfairness, people will disappoint you, and sometimes circumstances will make things incredibly hard. But the defining difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck is not whether life was kind to them, but whether they decided to take responsibility for their growth despite everything. Because blaming others might bring temporary relief to your ego, but it never changes your reality. Whereas taking ownership might sting in the beginning, but it gives you the power to rewrite the story. And I want you to think of every time in history, in business, in personal life, when someone defied the odds. Do you think they did it by waiting for the world to be fair, or by saying, "I will take charge of what I can control." The answer is always the latter, because true leaders, innovators, and survivors don't waste time on blame. They use their energy to find solutions. That same potential exists within you, so let me ask you, how many times have you blamed someone else in the last week? Maybe for your mood, your lack of progress, or your circumstances, and what did that blame accomplish? Did it move you forward? Or did it keep you exactly where you are? Now imagine instead that you chose ownership every single time. You got rejected, but instead of blaming the other person, you asked, "How can I prepare better next time?" You failed at a project, but instead of blaming your team, you asked, "What skills do I need to develop to make sure I succeed?" You had a conflict, but instead of blaming the other person's stubbornness, you asked, "What part of my communication can I improve?" Can you see how much faster you would grow if you lived this way? It's not about ignoring other people's faults. It's about refusing to let their faults define your life. And here's the beautiful truth. Once you start taking responsibility, your confidence increases, because you no longer feel like life is happening to you. You realize life is happening for you, giving you challenges that can shape you. And even when things don't go as planned, you carry the unshakable belief that you can respond with strength, you can adapt, you can outthink the situation, because your growth no longer depends on anyone else. It depends only on your mindset and your actions. So from this moment forward, I want you to train your brain to notice when you're slipping into blame. I want you to catch yourself when you say, "If only they hadn't done this," or "If only life was different." And instead I want you to pause and ask, "What is mine to own here? What can I change? What can I learn?" And with practice, this shift will become automatic. You will begin to see opportunities in every obstacle. You will stop wasting energy on excuses, and you will start fueling your growth with action. So remember this, and let it echo in your mind whenever you are tempted to blame. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. And growth is the very reason you are here. Growth is what gives your life meaning. Growth is what transforms setbacks into stepping stones. When you choose ownership, when you choose responsibility, when you decide to hold the mirror up to yourself instead of pointing your finger at others, you unlock the limitless capacity of your mind to outsmart any situation, to overcome any challenge, rise far beyond the limits that blame would have chained you to. Your brain is like a muscle, and every challenge is a weight to lift. And just as a bodybuilder cannot grow stronger by lifting nothing, you cannot sharpen your mind by avoiding the difficulties life places in your path. Critical thinking and resilience are not born in comfort but forged in pressure, tension, and effort. If you see obstacles as burdens instead of opportunities, you rob yourself of the chance to grow. Imagine for a moment walking into a gym and seeing two people side by side, one lifting light weights, barely straining, comfortable and smiling, the other lifting heavy, trembling, sweating, struggling with every rep. And ask yourself, which one will grow stronger over time? Of course, the one who chose the heavier weight, because strength is built in the struggle. And in the same way, your mental strength, your capacity to outthink, adapt, rise above challenges, is built when you push your mind against resistance, when you force it to go beyond the easy answer and search deeper for solutions. But here's the problem: most people hate discomfort. They avoid it. They run from it. They think if life is hard, something must be wrong. Yet the truth is that difficulty is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the very tool that life uses to build your critical thinking muscles. And if you embrace that instead of resenting it, your entire relationship with problems changes. Now, instead of saying, "Why me?" you say, "Try me." Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," you say, "This is my training ground." Back to times when you faced real challenges. Maybe it was a financial crisis, a broken relationship, a job rejection, or a health struggle. And now ask yourself, who were you before that moment, and who were you after? Chances are you walked out of it with more perspective, more resilience, and more understanding than you had before. And even though you may not have wanted the challenge shaped you. It carved strength into you that ease never could. And that is exactly how your brain grows. By stretching beyond what is easy. But here is the catch. Growth is not automatic. Just as lifting weights only makes you stronger if you lift with proper form and effort, challenges only build your mind if you approach them with awareness and ownership. Because if you face a problem and your first reaction is to collapse, complain, or blame, you miss the opportunity for growth. But if you face the same problem and say, "What can I learn here? How can I outthink this? How can I come out of this sharper than I went in?" then every difficulty becomes a mental workout. Every obstacle becomes a stepping stone, and your brain slowly becomes a powerful engine of clarity, adaptability, and problem solving. Now let's connect this to critical thinking, because critical thinking is not some abstract academic exercise. It is the practical ability to evaluate situations without bias, to see through distractions, to weigh evidence, to anticipate consequences, and to make better choices under pressure. The way you strengthen this ability is by using challenges as training weights. When life throws you confusion, you practice clarity. When life throws you setbacks, you practice resilience. When life throws you conflict, you practice perspective. And each time you do this, your brain is rewiring itself, just as muscles tear and rebuild stronger after each workout. But remember, just like a gym workout, this process hurts, stretches you, it makes you sweat, it forces you to push past what you thought was your limit. And many people quit too early. They drop the weight before the rep is complete. They avoid the struggle. They want growth without effort. But that is impossible. Mental strength, like physical strength, is earned, not given, and the price of it is discomfort. And here is the beauty of it: the more you train, capable you become. Just like someone who once struggled with 10 pounds can later handle 50 with ease. The challenges that once seemed unbearable to you will one day feel light, and what crushed you yesterday will not even shake you tomorrow. You will have trained your brain to lift heavier, to carry more, to think sharper, and to respond with wisdom instead of panic. And I want you to picture yourself in a future situation, maybe a crisis at work, maybe a sudden financial setback, maybe an unexpected betrayal. And instead of spiraling into blame or despair, you pause, breathe, and think, "I've trained for this. I know how to analyze. I know how to adapt. I know how to move forward." And that confidence doesn't come from luck. It comes from the mental workouts you chose every time you faced difficulty with courage instead of avoidance. So let me challenge you right now. Stop running from the weights of life. Stop wishing for easy days, because easy days don't make strong minds. Lean into the resistance. Embrace the struggle and tell yourself, "This is how I grow." And when you do, you'll notice that the problems that once terrified you begin to excite you, because you'll know that every problem is a hidden opportunity for growth. Every challenge is a lesson disguised as pain, So never forget this. Your brain is like a muscle. Every challenge is a weight to lift. If you avoid lifting, you will stay weak. But if you embrace the resistance, if you push through, if you train your mind deliberately, over time you will build a mental strength so powerful, so adaptable, so unshakable, that no situation can break you. You will have outsmarted not just the challenge, but your own fear of the challenge, and that is the highest level of growth. Excuses are easy. Excuses are seductive. Excuses are the comfortable blanket that shields you from the sting of responsibility, but they are also the invisible prison bars that keep you locked in the same place year after year. Every time you tell yourself a story about why you cannot move forward, you give that story power over your life. And what most people don't realize is that excuses are not just words, they are chains, they are anchors tied around your potential. And the longer you hold on to them, the heavier they become, until you can no longer even imagine moving forward. And the tragedy is that many people live their entire lives this way, explaining why things are the way they are instead of changing them, comforting themselves with reasons instead of building results. But if you truly want to train your brain to outsmart any situation, truly want to grow into a person who can think critically and act decisively, must recognize excuses for what they really are, lies you tell yourself to protect your ego from the discomfort of effort and accountability. Think about how many times you've heard yourself say, "I don't have enough time." Yet if you measured your hours, you'd find time spent scrolling, distracting, or procrastinating. Or maybe you've said, "I'm not ready yet," as if readiness will one day arrive like a package on your doorstep, when in truth readiness is created through action. Or maybe you've told yourself, "I can't because of my past," forgetting that the past is not a chain around your neck, but a teacher that only has power if you refuse to learn from it. Or perhaps you've said, "I can't because of them," because blaming others feels safer than confronting the reality that your choices, not theirs, are what ultimately determine your future. And let's be honest, excuses always have some truth in them. That's why they are so convincing. Yes, you may have less time than someone else. Yes, you may have faced more obstacles. Yes, others may have treated you unfairly. But the critical question is this: will you let those truths become permanent limits, or will you decide to rise despite them? Growth is never about ideal conditions, it is about refusing to let less than ideal conditions define you. Look at history, at inventors, leaders, survivors, thinkers. Rarely did they come from perfect circumstances. Rarely did they wait until everything was easy. Instead, they pressed forward while others complained. They chose action while others justified inaction. They turned excuses into fuel, and that is the same choice you must make. Because here is the paradox: excuses make you feel safe in the short term, but powerless in the long term, while responsibility makes you feel uncomfortable in the short term, but powerful in the long term. That power is what separates the stagnant from the growing. Excuses whisper, "It's not your fault." But responsibility shouts, "It may not be your fault, but it is your fight." And when you embrace that fight, you discover just how much potential you've been leaving on the table. So the next time your mind offers you an excuse, pause and ask yourself, what is this excuse costing me? Because it is costing you something. Maybe a dream, maybe an opportunity, maybe the respect you want for yourself, maybe the life you could have lived if you stopped explaining and started acting. And when you measure the cost of excuses, suddenly they lose their charm. Suddenly, you realize they are thieves stealing from your future, and you have been the one opening the door for them all along. But here's the good news. Just as excuses can be practiced, responsibility can be practiced too, and the more you practice it, the stronger it becomes, the more natural it feels, until one day you stop even noticing excuses because your brain is trained to look for solutions instead. Ask, how can I? Instead of, why not? And that simple shift changes everything. For example, instead of, I don't have time, say, how can I make time? Instead of, I don't know how, say, how can I learn? Instead of, it's too late for me, say, what can I do today to start? And when you replace excuses with questions, your mind lights up. It begins working for you instead of against you. It begins searching for creative answers, and those answers open doors that excuses would have kept shut forever. So understand this deeply. Excuses are the language of stagnation. Responsibility is the language of growth, and your future will be written in whichever language you choose to speak. You cannot think critically if you are drowning in excuses, because excuses cloud your vision, they distort reality, they stop you from seeing clearly what needs to be done. But once you strip them away, once you stand in the raw, honest light of responsibility, you begin to see options you never saw before, and that clarity is the beginning of transformation. So let this be your commitment moving forward. No more excuses, no more stories about why you cannot, only questions about how you will, only determination to rise above, because at the end of the day, excuses might give you comfort, but they will never give you growth. And if it's growth you seek, if it's mastery of your mind and your life that you desire, then you must choose the harder path, the path without excuses, the path of full ownership. And though it may challenge you, though it may stretch you, though it may demand more than you think you have, it will also reveal the strength, the intelligence, and the resilience you never knew you carried within you. That discovery is worth more than any excuse you could ever cling to. The words you use shape the way you think, and the way you think shapes the way you live, because language is not just communication. It is construction. It is the framework upon which your beliefs are built, and your beliefs are the engine that drives your actions. So if your words are weak, negative, or limiting, your entire life will shrink to fit inside those limitations. But if your words are strong, positive, and expansive, your life will expand to match that vision. And this is why self-talk is one of the most powerful tools you will ever master, because whether you realize it or not, you are always talking to yourself, silently, constantly, narrating your experiences, interpreting events, defining who you are. And those inner conversations are either planting seeds of growth or seeds of defeat. Think about this. When you say to yourself, I can't do this, your brain takes that command as truth and stops searching for possibilities. But when you say, I will figure this out, your brain lights up, searching, connecting, creating solutions, and in that moment you have shifted from paralysis to progress, all because of a single sentence. And yet, most people never pay attention to the way they talk to themselves. Repeat phrases like, I'm not good enough, or I'm always unlucky, or I always fail. And they think these are just harmless thoughts. But the brain does not treat them as harmless. The brain records them as instructions, and over time, those instructions create a pattern. And that pattern becomes a belief, and that belief becomes your reality. So if you want to transform your life, you must first transform your language, Because positive self-talk is not about being naive or pretending everything is perfect. It is about training your brain to focus on strength, on possibility, on resilience, and when you focus there, you give yourself the mental environment in which growth can thrive. Imagine for a moment two people facing the same setback. One says, "This always happens to me, I'll never succeed." The other says, "This is hard, but I can learn from it, and I will find another way." Now ask yourself, who is more likely to keep going, to discover new opportunities, to eventually succeed? Obviously the second person, and yet the only difference between them is their self-talk, their inner script, their choice of words. And here's the deeper truth: your self-talk is not only shaping how you see challenges, it is shaping how you see yourself, and how you see yourself determines how you show up in the world. So if you constantly tell yourself you are weak, you will walk with weakness. If you constantly tell yourself you are unlucky, you will interpret every event as proof of your bad luck. But if you tell yourself you are strong, resourceful, and capable, you will begin to act in alignment with that belief, and the world will respond to that energy. Some people say, "But isn't positive self-talk just lying to myself?" And the answer is no, because you are not lying when you tell yourself you have potential. You are reminding yourself of a truth that has always been there, but has been buried under years of negative conditioning. And even if the words feel unnatural at first, even if they feel forced, repetition will carve them into your brain, just as repetition of negative words carved limiting beliefs into you in the first place. So here is the practice. Become aware of the words you say to yourself. Catch the negative scripts and replace them with constructive ones. Because every time you repeat a phrase, you are rehearsing a future, and you get to choose whether that future is one of defeat or one of victory. Tell yourself, "I can handle this," and you start to handle it. Tell yourself, "I am learning," and you open the door to growth. Tell yourself, "I am becoming stronger every day," and your mind begins to align your actions with that statement, because your subconscious is always working to make your words come true. And it goes even further, because your self-talk also shapes how others see you. People can sense whether you carry yourself with confidence or with doubt. They can hear it in the way you speak. They can feel it in your energy. And often the difference between gaining an opportunity and losing one comes down to the confidence you project, which starts with the confidence you feed yourself through your words. So understand this deeply: your words are not empty, your words are powerful, your words are life-shaping tools. And if you want to train your brain to outsmart any situation, you must start by controlling the script that runs inside your mind. Because when your words change, your thinking changes. When your thinking changes, your actions change. And when your actions change, your entire life changes. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I can't," stop and say instead, "I'll try." And when you catch yourself saying, "I failed," stop and say instead, "I learned." And when you catch yourself saying, "I'll never," stop and say instead, "I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer." And in those small shifts, you are rewiring your brain, planting new seeds. And those seeds will one day grow into the reality you desire. Never underestimate the power of the words you whisper to yourself in silence, because those whispers become your beliefs become your habits become your destiny, and your destiny begins with a sentence. So choose that sentence wisely. Feed your mind with the language of strength, possibility, and hope, and you will discover that the world opens in response to the words you choose to live by. When you face setbacks, question is not, why me? But, what now? Because life is not a promise of smooth roads and gentle breezes. Life is a storm, unpredictable and often merciless, and if you expect fairness or comfort at every turn, you will be broken by disappointment. But if you accept that setbacks are part of the process, part of the training ground, part of the shaping of who you are becoming, then every stumble becomes a step forward in disguise, because the truth is this: setbacks are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that you are in the arena, that you are attempting something worth attempting, that you are moving beyond the safety of the sidelines, and only those who dare to step into the game will ever know the sting of loss and the taste of victory. But the crucial difference between those who rise and those who collapse lies in the question they ask when adversity strikes: why me? Keeps you stuck in self-pity, while what now catapults you into action. About it, every time you ask, why me? You are seeking reasons, explanations, sympathy, but none of these move you forward. They only deepen your frustration. Yet when you ask, what now? You are seeking strategy, solutions, and strength, and those are the tools that move mountains. And let us not sugarcoat this: setbacks hurt, rejection stings, failure can feel like a heavy blow to the chest. Pretending otherwise is foolish, but pain itself is not the enemy. Pain is the teacher. Pain is the signal that growth is underway. Pain is the evidence that you are stretching beyond your comfort zone. And if you can embrace that pain, not as punishment, but as progress, you will begin to see setbacks not as walls but as mirrors, reflecting back to you the areas where you must adjust, improve, and rise. So let me ask you, how many times in your life did something go wrong, only to lead you later to something better? Maybe you lost a job, only to find a new path that gave you more freedom. Maybe a relationship ended, only to teach you lessons that made you stronger for the future. Maybe a project failed, only to reveal skills you didn't even know you had. And in hindsight, you can see that the setback was not the end, but the beginning, the necessary step in a journey you could not have planned. If you look at your current setbacks through that same lens, you will realize that even in the darkest hour, something valuable is being built in you, but you must choose to see it, because setbacks can either harden your excuses or sharpen your resolve. They can either become the story of why you gave up, or the story of how you rose higher than ever before. And that choice is made not by circumstance but by mindset. Critical thinkers know this well. They do not waste energy wishing the past were different. They analyze the present for what it is, and they ask, what now? What's my next move? What can I learn from this? What will I do differently? And that calm, clear approach turns chaos into clarity, because setbacks are never final unless you decide to stop moving. Of all the greatest achievements in history, behind every breakthrough is a trail of setbacks. Behind every discovery is a pile of failures. Behind every success is a long story of rejection, mistakes, and detours. The difference is that those who succeeded kept asking, what now? Until the answer revealed itself. So when you are knocked down, remind yourself this is not the end. This is a page, not the whole book, and the pen is still in your hand. So write the next line, take the next step, try the next idea, because forward motion is the antidote to despair. And here's another truth: setbacks are often tests. Not tests of fate, but tests of faith, tests of persistence, tests of whether you truly want what you say you want. because anyone can keep going when things are easy, but only the committed, only the resilient, only the focused can keep going when every door seems to slam shut. And it is in those moments that your character is built. It is in those moments that you separate yourself from the crowd, because the crowd gives up, crowd complains, the crowd asks, "Why me?" But the leaders, the achievers, the resilient ask, "What now?" And then they move. Moving does not mean rushing blindly. It means taking the lesson, adjusting your approach, and continuing forward with wisdom you didn't have before, because every setback carries information, and if you pay attention, you can extract the lesson, you can refine your method, you can return stronger than before. And that is how setbacks become setups for comebacks, how losses become the seeds of victories. The next time life knocks you down, do not waste a single second drowning in, "Why me?" Pause, breathe, ask, "What now?" And then take even the smallest step forward, because that step is proof that you are not defeated, proof that you are still in control, proof that you are still the author of your story. And when you collect enough of those steps, one after another, you will look back and realize that what once felt like the end was actually the turning point, the very moment when your greatest growth began. So hold this truth close to your heart. Setbacks will come. They are guaranteed. But so is your ability to rise, if you meet every challenge with the courage to ask, "What now?" You will train your brain to see possibility in impossibility. You will condition yourself to move instead of moan. You will discover that no setback is strong enough to stop a mind that refuses to stop growing. Critical thinking requires humility, and humility is often misunderstood, because people confuse humility with weakness or passivity, when in truth humility is one of the most powerful strengths you can ever develop, for humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself accurately. It is recognizing that you are not infallible, that your perspective is not the whole truth, that your decisions can be flawed, and that your mind, no matter how sharp, always has more to learn, and this recognition is the doorway to growth. Because the moment you believe you already know everything, the moment you believe you cannot be wrong, you stop growing, you stop listening, you stop questioning, and your brain, instead of being a flexible muscle capable of adapting, hardens into rigid stone that resists change. Rigidity is the enemy of progress. Think about it. How many times have conflicts escalated because one or both people refused to admit they might be wrong? How many opportunities have been missed because someone clung stubbornly to an outdated way of thinking? How many relationships have been damaged because pride took priority over truth? And when you look closer, you'll see that all of these situations stem from a lack of humility, from the refusal to say, "Maybe I don't know everything, maybe I need to listen, maybe I need to adjust." And without that ability, critical thinking cannot exist, because critical thinking is not just about analyzing facts, it's about questioning assumptions, including your own, and testing your beliefs against reality. And that requires the courage to admit you might be wrong. Let's break this down. Humility in critical thinking means being open to new information, even when it challenges your comfort zone. It means listening more than speaking. It means asking questions instead of assuming answers. And most importantly, it means valuing truth above ego. Ego always wants to be right, but truth does not care about your pride. Truth simply is. And the stronger your humility, the closer you will get to truth, which means the stronger your critical thinking will become. But here's the paradox. Many people resist humility because they think admitting weakness makes them appear small, yet in reality, humility makes you bigger, because it expands your mind, it opens doors to learning, it invites others to share their knowledge with you. It frees you from the exhausting burden of pretending to be perfect. And when you live this way, you not only think better, you live lighter. Now consider this: some of the wisest leaders in history were not those who boasted of always being right, but those who admitted mistakes quickly, who surrounded themselves with people smarter than them, who asked for advice, who learned continuously. That humility allowed them to make better decisions, to see from multiple angles, to avoid blind spots, and to grow faster than those trapped in arrogance. Think of humility like cleaning the lens of your glasses. Without it, your vision is blurry, clouded by ego and bias, but with it, you see reality more clearly, and clarity is the foundation of critical thinking. You cannot evaluate a situation properly if your pride is distorting the picture. And here's something else humility also builds: trust. Your full attention, because when people see that you are willing to admit mistakes, they feel safe to speak honestly with you, they respect you more, they collaborate more openly, and this creates an environment where truth can flourish. And in that environment, your own thinking expands, because you now have access to perspectives beyond your own. And that is the essence of critical thinking: seeing beyond the narrow frame of your own experience. But humility is not just about how you relate to others, it is also about how you relate to yourself, because humility with yourself means not beating yourself up for being imperfect, but also not excusing yourself from growth. It means holding yourself accountable while remembering you are a work in progress. It means saying, "I don't know yet, but I can learn," instead of, "I'll never be able to do this." And that mindset keeps you moving forward without the paralysis of shame or the blindness of arrogance. So how do you practice humility? You practice by listening without interrupting, by asking questions even when you think you already know, by admitting your mistakes quickly and without excuses, by actively seeking feedback, by reminding yourself that every single person you meet knows something you don't, and by choosing curiosity over judgment. And when you do this, something remarkable happens. Your brain becomes more flexible, your thinking becomes sharper, your ability to solve problems increases. Because you are no longer trapped inside the echo chamber of your own assumptions, you are tapping into a wider pool of knowledge. That is where real wisdom comes from. So the next time you feel defensive when someone challenges you, pause and ask yourself, what if they're right? What can I learn from this? How might my perspective be incomplete? And even if you don't fully agree, just the act of considering another viewpoint stretches your mind, and stretching is growth, just like a muscle that only grows when it is pushed beyond its limit. Remember, humility is not about making yourself smaller, it is about making your vision wider. It is about seeing yourself and the world more clearly, and in that clarity, your thinking sharpens, growth accelerates, and your ability to outsmart any situation multiplies. So let this truth settle deep inside you: humility is not weakness. Humility is strength under control. Humility is the gateway to wisdom. Humility is the foundation of critical thinking. And the more you embrace it, more unstoppable your growth will become. Positive self-talk is not just about chanting affirmations or sugarcoating reality. It is about deliberately choosing the words you allow to circulate in your mind, because the dialogue you have with yourself is the most powerful influence on your emotions, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. Too many people let that dialogue run wild, filled with criticism, doubt, fear, and negativity, and then they wonder why they feel stuck, unmotivated, or defeated before they even begin. But here's the truth: your brain believes what you repeatedly tell it. And if you tell it you are not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, your brain will filter your experiences to match that belief, shutting down opportunities and magnifying obstacles. Yet if you tell yourself that you are resourceful, adaptable, and capable of learning, your brain will scan your environment for evidence to support that, unlocking possibilities you never noticed before. Because positive self-talk is not magic, it is programming. It is training your subconscious to focus on solutions instead of problems, to see opportunities instead of dead ends, to believe in growth instead of limitation. And this practice is not about ignoring challenges. It is about equipping yourself with the mental tools to face those challenges with strength and clarity. Think about it. Every time you step into a difficult situation, you bring with you an internal voice, and that voice will either act as your enemy or your ally. It will either sabotage you with doubt or empower you with courage, and the choice of which voice you strengthen is entirely yours. No one else can speak inside your head, only you. So let's be practical. How do you cultivate positive self-talk? First, you must become aware of the words you are already using, because most people run on autopilot, repeating the same toxic scripts they absorbed from childhood, from society, from past failures, without ever questioning them. And awareness is the first step to change. Start listening. Catch yourself when you say, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," "This is impossible," and challenge those words. Ask yourself, is this true? Or is this just a story I've been telling myself? And more often than not, you will realize it is just a story. And the beautiful thing about stories is that you can rewrite them. The second step is replacement, because the brain hates a vacuum. You can't just remove negative words. You must replace them with empowering ones. Instead of, "I can't do this," say, "I'm learning how to do this." Instead of, "This is too hard," say, "This is challenging, but I'm capable of finding a way through." Instead of, "I always fail," say, "I am improving with every attempt." And notice how these replacements shift your energy. Words shape emotions, emotions shape actions, and actions shape outcomes. The third step is repetition, because one positive phrase will not undo years of negative programming. You must repeat, reinforce, and rehearse your new script until it becomes second nature, just like training a muscle. And at first it will feel awkward, even fake. But over time your brain will adapt, and what once felt forced will feel natural, and eventually automatic. That is when you know your self-talk has truly transformed. And let's be clear, positive self-talk does not mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It means framing reality in a way that empowers you to take action, saying, "This is difficult, but I have faced difficult things before, and I can do it again." It means saying, "I don't know the answer yet, but I am capable of finding it." It means saying, "I made a mistake, but I am learning from it and moving forward stronger." This is not denial. This is resilience. This is strength in words, and science backs this up. Research shows that positive self-talk improves focus, reduces stress, enhances performance, and builds resilience. Athletes use it to push through physical limits. Leaders use it to stay calm under pressure. Everyday people can use it to navigate challenges at work, in relationships, and in personal goals. Because when your internal voice is strong and supportive, You carry an invisible coach with you everywhere you go. What about those moments when negative self-talk feels overwhelming, when your inner critic is screaming louder than any positive phrase? That's when you must remember that your inner critic is not the truth. It is just a habit, a voice built from old wounds, old fears, old failures, and like any habit, it can be broken, and one powerful way to quiet the critic is to separate yourself from it. To say, "That's not me, that's just the old script." And then consciously choose a new line. And with enough practice, the critic will lose its grip, and your empowering voice will take the lead. And remember, the way you talk to yourself sets the standard for how others will talk to you. Because if you constantly belittle yourself, others will sense that and follow suit. But if you speak to yourself with respect and confidence, others will mirror that too, because energy is contagious, and your self-talk is the source of that energy. So here's the challenge for the next week. Commit to becoming your own best ally. Commit to catching every negative word you say about yourself and replacing it with one that uplifts. Commit to rehearsing words of power every morning before you start your day. Commit to speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply love, and watch how this shift begins to change not only your thoughts, but also your behavior, your decisions, and even the way others respond to you. Positive self-talk is not fluff. It is strategy. It is self-leadership. It is training your brain to stay aligned with your goals instead of your fears. And when you master this, your full attention, you will carry within you a voice that refuses to let you quit, that pushes you forward when you feel like stopping, that reminds you of your strength when you forget, and that guides you back to your path when distractions try to pull you away. That is how you transform your mind, one word at a time, one phrase at a time, until your inner dialogue becomes a steady stream of power that fuels your journey. So remember this: your thoughts are not harmless whispers. They are commands to your brain. They are blueprints for your future. And if you want a life of growth, resilience, and success, you must start by training the voice inside your head, because the world will challenge you enough. Don't let your own words become another obstacle. Let them be your greatest source of strength, your constant reminder that you are capable, adaptable, and unstoppable. And when you master the art of positive self-talk, you will find that no matter how difficult the situation, you always have a voice inside saying, "You've got this, keep going, your best is yet to come." Your comfort zone may feel safe, it may feel predictable, may feel like a warm blanket that protects you from the unknown. But the reality is that the comfort zone is also a cage, a beautifully decorated prison that keeps you small, and while it shields you from fear, it also shields you from growth, from adventure, from discovering the full capacity of your mind and your potential, because nothing extraordinary is ever created within the borders of comfort. Everything worth achieving, every innovation, every breakthrough, every story of transformation comes from stepping beyond what feels familiar. Your full attention, this is where critical thinking meets courage, because the brain naturally craves safety and efficiency. It wants to repeat patterns. It wants to avoid risk. It wants to conserve energy. And if you let it, your mind will trick you into believing that staying in the same routines, the same habits, the same environment is the best choice. But in truth, this is how dreams die, quietly, slowly, suffocated under the weight of sameness. If you want to outsmart any situation, if you want to become a thinker who thrives in chaos, who adapts to change, who sees solutions where others see only problems, You must deliberately step beyond the edges of your comfort zone. Only in that space does growth occur. Think about it. When was the last time you truly surprised yourself? The last time you discovered you could do something you thought was impossible? It wasn't when you stayed comfortable, was when you dared to be uncomfortable, when you risked failure, embarrassment, rejection, or challenge, and yet came out the other side stronger, wiser, more resilient. And this is the paradox of life. We grow most in the moments we fear most. We learn most when we risk stumbling. We expand most when we step into the unknown. So if you want to train your brain, you must train it to embrace discomfort, to lean into fear, to see challenge not as danger but as opportunity. And here is where positive self-talk becomes a powerful ally, because when you leave your comfort zone, your inner critic will try to drag you back. Things like, "This is too hard. You're not ready. What if you fail?" But with the discipline of positive self-talk, respond with, "I am capable of learning. Every master was once a beginner. Failure is feedback, not the end." And suddenly, the fear that once paralyzed you becomes the fuel that propels you forward. And understand this, leaving your comfort zone doesn't always mean dramatic leaps like quitting your job overnight or moving to a new country. Sometimes it is as simple as speaking up when you'd normally stay silent, trying a new skill when you'd normally avoid risk, approaching someone new when you'd normally shrink back. And each of these small acts of courage stretch the edges of your comfort zone, gradually expanding it until what once terrified you becomes second nature. And then you face the next edge, and the next. This continuous cycle of expansion is what creates unstoppable growth. Now, some people will resist this idea. They will say, "But I like my routines. I like my comfort. I don't want to feel fear or stress." And to that I say, comfort is fine for rest, but it is deadly for growth, because stress, when managed, is not destruction, it is construction. It is the very pressure that strengthens your mind. Just as muscles only grow under resistance, and bones only strengthen under weight, so too does your brain only expand under challenge. So if you truly want resilience, confidence, and adaptability, you must expose yourself to calculated discomfort, to environments that test you, to goals that stretch you, to situations where you cannot predict the outcome, because in those very moments you train your brain to remain calm in chaos, think clearly under pressure, to adapt instead of collapse. And let's be honest, the world outside your comfort zone can be intimidating. People might judge you, you might fail in public, you might stumble and look foolish. But let me ask you this: would you rather risk temporary discomfort in pursuit of growth, or spend a lifetime in the safety of sameness, only to look back with regret at everything you never dared to try? Because regret is the true enemy here, not fear. And the cost of staying comfortable is far greater than the cost of stepping out. And here's the beautiful irony: the more often you step outside your comfort zone, the bigger your comfort zone becomes, and suddenly situations that once terrified you, public speaking, leading a team, learning a skill, starting a business, become part of your normal reality. And from there, you can tackle even greater challenges. This cycle builds confidence not through empty affirmations, but through lived experience, through proving to yourself again and again that you can do hard things, that you can survive discomfort, that you can adapt and thrive. And this is the secret of growth. Confidence is not built by waiting until you feel ready. Confidence is built by acting before you feel ready, by stepping into the discomfort and discovering you can handle it, And each time you do, brain rewires itself to see fear not as a stop sign, but as a green light, a signal that growth lies ahead. So here's your challenge. Identify one area of your life where you've been clinging to comfort. Maybe it's avoiding difficult conversations. Maybe it's staying in a job you've outgrown. Maybe it's hiding your talents instead of sharing them. Commit to one bold step outside that zone this week, not because it will be easy, but because it will be uncomfortable. And in that discomfort lies your next level. And when your mind screams for safety, remind yourself that comfort may feel good now, but it will rob you of tomorrow's greatness, while discomfort may feel hard now, but it will gift you tomorrow's strength. And that is a trade worth making. So let this truth echo in your mind. The comfort zone may keep you safe, but it will never make you strong. If you truly want to outsmart any situation, if you truly want to sharpen your critical thinking, if you truly want to transform your mindset, you must live on the edge. You must embrace the unfamiliar. You must step again and again into the space where fear and growth collide, because it is in that space that your real power is forged. It is in that space that you discover who you are truly capable of becoming. Resilience is not the absence of hardship, but the ability to rise again after hardship, to take the blow, to feel the sting, to experience the weight of struggle, and still choose to move forward, because life will test you in ways you cannot predict. It will throw storms that threaten to knock you off course. And in those moments, the difference between those who collapse and those who grow lies in the strength of resilience. And resilience is not something you are born with in full form. It is something you build, like a muscle, through repeated exposure to difficulty, through conscious choices, through the mindset that says, I will not be broken. I will bend and return stronger. And this is what critical thinkers understand deeply, that setbacks are not stop signs but signals that say, here is where you can grow, here is where you can sharpen your skills, here is where you can strengthen your character. Because without resilience, every challenge becomes a catastrophe, every rejection becomes a wound that never heals, every failure becomes a permanent label. But with resilience, those same events transform into stepping stones, into lessons, into stories of endurance that carry you forward. And the foundation of resilience begins with perspective, because the way you interpret hardship determines whether it crushes you or creates you. Two people can face the same loss, the same failure, the same betrayal, and one will sink into despair, while the other rises with new determination. And the difference lies not in the event itself but in the story they tell themselves about it, which is why cultivating resilience starts in the mind, with the decision to see obstacles as temporary, not permanent, to see pain as instructive, not destructive, to see every ending as the beginning of something new. And when you train your brain to think this way, you build the psychological armor that keeps you moving even when the ground feels like it is falling away beneath you. And resilience is not about pretending to be invincible. It is not about denying pain or bottling up emotion. It is about allowing yourself to feel fully, to process honestly, and then to stand up with the determination that says, this will not define me. Because denial is fragility, but acceptance and perseverance are strength. And when you live with resilience, you no longer fear hardship, you no longer run from difficulty. Instead, you embrace it as part of life's training program, as the weight that strengthens your muscles, as the test that proves your capability. And think about the stories that inspire us most. They are not stories of ease or luxury. They are stories of people who endured, who failed and tried again, who faced betrayal and still moved forward, who stumbled and yet refused to stop. And the reason these stories resonate is because resilience is the human spirit at its highest expression. Resilience is the evidence that we are more powerful than our circumstances. Resilience is the proof that even when everything seems lost, growth is still possible. But let us make this practical. How do you build resilience in your own life? First, by mastering your self-talk, because in times of hardship the voice you hear most is your own, and if that voice tells you you're doomed, you're weak, you'll never make it, then your resilience collapses before it even has a chance to grow. But if that voice says, I can handle this, I will adapt, this pain is temporary, I will rise, then your resilience multiplies because your mind follows the direction of your words. Second, by focusing on what you can control. Hardship always brings with it chaos, and chaos tempts you to waste energy on things you cannot change. But resilience is built by redirecting your energy to what you can do right now. Even if it is small, even if it feels insignificant, because small actions compound, and the discipline of taking control, where you can slowly restores your sense of power. Third, by cultivating gratitude, because gratitude shifts your perspective from what you have lost to what you still have, from what went wrong to what remains right. This shift is not about denying hardship, it is about balancing it, about reminding yourself that even in darkness, light still exists. This light is what gives you the strength to keep moving. And fourth, by learning to reframe failure, because failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. It is the raw material from which success is built. And resilient people understand that every failure carries feedback, every loss carries a lesson. And if you extract that lesson instead of wallowing in shame, you transform failure into fuel. And finally, resilience is built through connection, because no one is meant to endure hardship alone, and those who surround themselves with supportive people, with voices of encouragement, with examples of strength, find it easier to stand up again, because resilience is contagious. Just as negativity drags you down, resilience lifts you up. And make no mistake, building resilience is not easy. It requires conscious effort. It requires willingness to endure discomfort. It requires patience with yourself as you grow stronger. But the reward is extraordinary, because with resilience, no setback can hold you forever. No loss can stop you completely. No failure can define you permanently. Nifty. And this is the mindset that allows you to outsmart life's most difficult situations, because when others are paralyzed by difficulty, already asking, what's next? How do I move forward? What can I learn? And this proactive stance keeps you in motion, keeps you in growth, keeps you in the game. So let this truth sink deep into your spirit. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about never staying down. Resilience is about refusing to let hardship be the end of your story. Resilience is about standing tall with the scars of your past and saying, these are not signs of defeat. These are signs of survival. These are proof of my strength. And the more you embrace this truth, the more you will discover that you are capable of surviving far more than you once believed, that you are stronger than your pain, that you are bigger than your setbacks, and that nothing, not failure, not rejection, not hardship, has the power to stop a resilient mind that refuses to quit. Focus is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, because in a world overflowing with distractions, the ability to concentrate your mind on what truly matters is the difference between success and mediocrity. between progress and stagnation, between mastery and drifting aimlessly. And yet focus is not something that comes naturally in the modern age, where every moment is filled with notifications, noise, and interruptions designed to fracture your attention. Because attention is a resource, and like any resource, it must be guarded and cultivated. And the first step in building focus is understanding that your brain cannot multitask effectively. Even though it likes to believe it can, studies consistently show that shifting your attention between tasks reduces productivity and drains mental energy, which is why focus is really the skill of channeling your energy toward a single goal at a time. And this requires discipline, boundaries, and intention, because every distraction you allow chips away at your mental clarity and your ability to solve problems creatively, to think deeply, make meaningful progress. And if you want to train your brain to outsmart any situation, you must train it to protect focus as fiercely as you protect your most precious possessions. And one of the most effective ways to do this is to set clear priorities, because without knowing what is most important, your attention will scatter like leaves in the wind, and clarity about your priorities acts like a compass, guiding your mind toward what matters most and away from what only feels urgent, but is ultimately irrelevant. And here is where critical thinking comes in, because focus without clarity is wasted effort, and critical thinking allows you to identify the most meaningful goals, the most impactful actions, to direct your attention accordingly. And once you have clarity, you must build rituals that reinforce your focus, such as setting aside distraction, free blocks of time for deep work, turning off notifications, creating a workspace designed for concentration, using tools like the Pomodoro technique or time blocking to train your mind to sustain attention over longer periods, because focus, like a muscle, grows stronger with consistent exercise, and every time you resist the temptation of distraction and return to your task, you are strengthening your mental endurance. But focus also requires emotional discipline, because your mind will naturally drift toward novelty, toward pleasure, toward anything that offers instant gratification, and without awareness, you will find yourself pulled away from your most important work by the lure of small, meaningless rewards. And this is why self-talk matters, because the way you speak to yourself determines how easily you return to focus. And when distraction arises, you can choose to say, "I will return to my priority," or "I can finish this later," or "This is not important right now." And each time you consciously choose to refocus, you train your brain to resist distraction more effectively. And this is not a skill that grows overnight. It is built in small, intentional acts, repeated day after day, until focus becomes second nature. And understand this: focus is not about narrowing your world to one thing forever. It is about controlling when and how you give your attention so that you can fully engage with what matters most in the moment. Your full attention, which means learning to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones, learning to protect your energy so you can protect your purpose, and learning to manage your environment so that focus becomes the default state rather than a constant battle. Let us not underestimate the power of focused thinking in overcoming challenges, because when your mind is clear and undistracted, it can solve problems faster, see patterns others miss, and create solutions that feel almost effortless. This is the essence of critical thinking: deliberate, focused, and informed thought that cuts through noise and confusion to reach clarity. And the habit of focus turns this way of thinking into your natural state, so that when difficulties arise, instead of reacting impulsively or losing yourself in distraction, you are able to engage with precision, strategy, and creativity. And this is what gives you the ability to outsmart situations that would overwhelm most people. A focused mind sees the path forward, when others see only a tangle of problems. But maintaining focus is not without its challenges, because modern life is designed to fragment attention, and resistance to distraction requires constant vigilance, self-awareness, and commitment. This is where positive self-talk becomes essential, because in the moment of distraction, you can train yourself to say, "This is not aligned with my goal. I choose focus. I value my clarity more than this temporary interruption." And these statements strengthen your mental resolve, turning focus from an occasional achievement into a daily habit. And the more you practice this, the more your brain learns to operate in a state of deep concentration with less effort, making focus a natural skill instead of a constant battle. When focus becomes your default, you will notice profound changes in your life. Greater productivity, deeper learning, more meaningful relationships, and a stronger sense of control over your direction, because focus gives you the power to shape your reality by directing your attention to what matters most. And so, if you want to transform your mindset, if you want to outsmart any situation, you must train your brain to master focus, because without focus your critical thinking will scatter, your goals will blur, and your ability to grow will be diminished. But with focus, you will have the power to cut through complexity, to rise above distraction, to think clearly in the chaos, to act decisively when it matters most. And that is the real skill that separates those who drift through life from those who create it. This is why focus is not just a skill, it is a mindset, a discipline, and a lifelong practice that empowers you to transform challenges into opportunities, noise into clarity, and chaos into mastery. And the sooner you begin to cultivate it, the sooner you will discover that your mind is not your enemy in the modern world, but your greatest ally. Decision-making is one of the most critical abilities you can develop, because life constantly places you at crossroads where every choice carries consequences, and yet most people underestimate the power of decisions, thinking they are simply moments in time, when in truth each decision is a building block of your life, shaping your future in ways that are often invisible until much later. And decision-making is not just about choosing between options. It is about developing clarity, discipline, and courage in the face of uncertainty, because life rarely presents perfect choices, but rather options wrapped in incomplete information, risk, and ambiguity. And this is where critical thinking becomes indispensable, because a critical thinker approaches decisions with intentionality, analyzing facts, anticipating outcomes, and questioning assumptions. And the foundation of wise decision-making lies in the ability to step back, slow down your thinking, and detach emotionally just enough to evaluate choices without being hijacked by impulsive reactions, because impulsive decisions often feel urgent but lead to regret, while thoughtful decisions, even if slower, create results aligned with your deeper goals. This is why decision-making is both a skill and a mindset, cultivated through practice, reflection, and self-awareness. And at the core of effective decision-making is clarity about your values, because when you know what matters most to you, choices become simpler, not because they are easier, but because they are guided by a consistent framework that reduces uncertainty and mental fatigue. And when you lack clarity, small decisions can feel paralyzing, because without a compass, every path seems equally viable or equally uncertain. Decision-making is not only about clarity of values, It is about cultivating confidence, because hesitation and doubt freeze action. Inaction is often the greatest cost of poor decision making, because time moves forward whether you decide or not. And when you avoid making a decision, surrender control of your future to chance and circumstance. And this is why building decision-making confidence is essential, and you build confidence by practicing small decisions deliberately, learning from outcomes, and training your mind to trust its reasoning process. And part of this practice is accepting that no decision is ever perfectly safe or guaranteed, because uncertainty is an inherent part of life. Decision-making is the art of moving forward despite uncertainty, of making the best choice you can with the information available, and adjusting course when necessary, because flexibility is a key part of wise decision-making. Furthermore, decision-making requires emotional balance, because emotions can both guide and mislead you, and learning to identify when your emotions are helping you and when they are clouding judgment is a skill in itself, because fear can make you avoid valuable opportunities, and overconfidence can blind you to risks, and the most effective decision-makers learn to integrate intuition with reason, listening to their instincts while also testing them against reality. This is where positive self-talk plays a vital role. The way you frame your inner dialogue during decision-making influences both clarity and courage, and telling yourself, "I have the capacity to decide wisely. I can learn from the outcome. I trust my judgment," transforms decision-making from a source of stress into a skill of empowerment. The more you practice this mindset, the less fear and doubt will dominate your process. Decision-making is also deeply tied to accountability, because avoiding responsibility for your choices weakens your ability to grow, and growth comes when you own both your successes and your mistakes. Critical thinkers take accountability seriously, your full attention, because they know that the lessons from wrong decisions are often richer than the rewards from correct ones, and that each decision is not just a step toward an outcome, but an opportunity to strengthen your decision-making ability itself. This is why wise decision-makers create systems to review and reflect on their choices regularly, because reflection turns experience into learning, and learning strengthens future decisions. And let us also understand that decision-making shapes more than just results. It shapes character, because every choice you make is a declaration of who you are and what you stand for, and consistent decision-making aligned with your values builds integrity, discipline, and resilience, whereas inconsistent choices erode self-trust and clarity of purpose. And this is why decision-making should never be treated lightly, but approached with the seriousness of someone who understands that life is a series of interconnected choices that create momentum toward either growth or stagnation. And once you understand this, every decision becomes an act of self-investment, an opportunity to build a life aligned with your vision. Power of decision-making extends into every area of life. Your career, relationships, health, and personal development, because every step you take is driven by choices, and those who master decision-making do not wait for perfect clarity or the absence of risk before moving forward. They act decisively while managing uncertainty, because the true skill is not avoiding mistakes, but knowing how to course correct when mistakes happen. This requires a mindset that treats decisions not as irreversible endpoints, but as part of a continuous process of learning and adaptation. With that mindset, every choice, whether it leads to success or setback, becomes valuable, because it adds to your experience, sharpens your judgment, strengthens your ability to navigate complexity, And so, decision making is not merely a process. It is a discipline of life. And the more consciously you develop it, the more you empower yourself to live with intention, to shape your destiny rather than drift through it. The more you practice making decisions with clarity, confidence, and accountability, the stronger your critical thinking will become, because decision-making and critical thinking feed each other, and this combination creates a powerful force that allows you to outsmart challenges, to navigate uncertainty with skill, and to turn crossroads into launching points for growth. And therefore, every time you face a decision, you have the opportunity to exercise this power, to strengthen your mind, to build your resilience, and to direct your life in the direction you choose. When you embrace this truth, decision-making transforms from a source of stress into a source of freedom, a daily practice that turns uncertainty into opportunity and chaos into clarity. And the ultimate reward of mastering decision-making is the ability to step into life with confidence, knowing that no matter what comes, you have the skill, mindset, and courage to choose your path wisely and keep moving forward. Resilience is one of the most important mental skills you can develop, because life is not a straight path. Challenges, setbacks, and unexpected changes are inevitable, and yet resilience is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about learning how to navigate difficulty with strength, adaptability, and clarity. Developing resilience begins with understanding that setbacks are not signs of failure, but opportunities for growth. Pay full attention, because every obstacle contains the seeds of learning if you approach it with the right mindset. And this is where critical thinking becomes essential, because resilience is not simply about enduring hardship. It is about analyzing the situation, understanding the factors at play, and responding with intention rather than reaction. And the first step toward building resilience is to cultivate emotional awareness, because when you can recognize and understand your emotional responses to challenges, you gain the ability to manage them instead of letting them control you. An emotional awareness allows you to shift from impulsive reactions to thoughtful responses, strengthens both your mind and your capacity to overcome difficulty. This is why resilience is built as much in the mind as in the circumstances themselves, because a strong mind interprets challenges not as insurmountable barriers, but as tests to be navigated, as lessons to be learned, and as opportunities to grow stronger. And resilience is a mindset that transforms hardship into a catalyst for improvement. Furthermore, resilience is deeply connected to perspective, because the way you interpret events shapes your ability to recover and move forward. And resilient people have a habit of reframing difficulties, so they are not overwhelming tragedies, but meaningful experiences, because perspective allows you to step back and see beyond the immediate pain or discomfort to the bigger picture. This reframing process is a skill that can be developed through deliberate practice. And one of the most effective tools for cultivating resilience is positive self-talk, because the way you speak to yourself in moments of challenge shapes your inner narrative, telling yourself, "I can handle this. This is an opportunity to grow. I will find a way forward," rewires your brain to focus on solutions rather than problems. Self-talk transforms internal struggle into inner strength, making resilience not a passive trait, but an active choice. And the more you practice this, the more resilient your mind becomes, because resilience grows stronger with repetition, just like a muscle grows stronger with consistent exercise. And every time you face difficulty and choose to engage it with clarity and determination, you reinforce your capacity to withstand future challenges. This is why resilience is not a fixed trait, but a skill that can be learned, strengthened, and refined over a lifetime. And resilience also requires flexibility, because rigid persistence in the face of change can lead to burnout or stagnation, while adaptability allows you to adjust strategies without losing sight of your goals, and resilient people learn to pivot, to change course when necessary, embrace uncertainty rather than resist it, and flexibility comes from a foundation of self-awareness and clarity about your values, because when you know what matters most, you can adapt without losing your purpose. And this is why resilient decision-making is grounded in self-knowledge, because resilience is not blind endurance, but informed persistence guided by clarity of purpose and an openness to growth. And this combination creates a mindset that thrives under pressure rather than crumbles under it. Furthermore, resilience is strengthened by experience, because every challenge you face and overcome adds to your inner resourcefulness. And the more you learn to navigate difficulty, the more confident you become in your ability to handle whatever comes. And this is why reflection is an essential part of building resilience, because looking back on challenges you have overcome allows you to see your own capacity for growth, to recognize patterns in how you respond to stress, strengthen your mental frameworks for future challenges, and this reflection turns adversity into a teacher, transforming your mindset into one that views obstacles as opportunities rather than threats. This shift in perspective changes everything about how you approach life, because resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about transforming hardship into a source of strength. And resilience is not only about overcoming external challenges, is also about facing internal struggles, because self-doubt, fear, and negative self-talk can undermine your ability to persist when the going gets tough. Is why building resilience requires developing self-compassion, because being kind to yourself in moments of difficulty creates the inner conditions for recovery and growth. And self-compassion does not mean lowering standards or avoiding accountability. It means treating yourself with the same encouragement, patience, respect you would offer a friend in need. And this internal support strengthens your resolve and keeps you moving forward when circumstances are challenging. And resilience is ultimately about growth, about transforming difficulty into learning, uncertainty into opportunity, and pressure into power, because a resilient mind does not simply survive adversity, uses adversity as fuel for transformation, and this transformation comes from a deliberate process of self-awareness, self-talk, decision-making, and perspective shifting. And resilience is strengthened each time you practice these skills, each time you face challenge with clarity rather than fear, and each time you respond with intention rather than reaction. And the more you integrate resilience into your mindset, the more it becomes your natural response to challenge, so that when life inevitably presents difficulties, you face them not with panic or resistance, but with confidence and adaptability. And this is why resilience is not a one-time achievement, but a lifelong practice, a daily choice to cultivate strength in the face of uncertainty, to maintain clarity in the face of chaos, to transform every challenge into a stepping stone for growth. And in doing so, you create not just the ability to survive life's challenges, but the ability to thrive in spite of them. And this is the power of resilience. The ability to not just withstand life, transform it through strength, clarity, adaptability, and growth. Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, because it is the foundation of personal growth, decision-making, emotional intelligence, and resilience. Yet so many people go through life without truly knowing themselves, without understanding the patterns that drive their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and without this understanding, they are easily influenced by external circumstances, opinions, and pressures. The first step to developing self-awareness is to intentionally observe your own mind, your thoughts, feelings, impulses, motivations, without judgment, because self-awareness is not about criticizing yourself, but about honestly and compassionately understanding yourself so that you can make choices aligned with your true values and goals. This requires cultivating the habit of reflection, because reflection transforms experiences into insights, and insights build clarity. Clarity builds purpose, and purpose directs your energy toward meaningful action, and self-awareness also requires you to identify your blind spots, those areas of your thinking and behavior that you overlook or underestimate, which can undermine your growth if left unchecked. These blind spots often appear in the form of biases, limiting beliefs, or habitual reactions, and uncovering them requires curiosity and humility, because the ability to question yourself honestly without defensiveness is a hallmark of true self-awareness. This is where critical thinking becomes essential, because self-awareness without critical thinking can become self-absorption, while critical thinking without self-awareness can become cold analysis, disconnected from personal growth. And together they create a balanced approach that allows you to understand both yourself and the world more deeply, navigate life with intention and wisdom. Furthermore, self-awareness is deeply connected to emotional intelligence, because the more you understand your own emotions, the more you can understand and manage them effectively. And this emotional clarity allows you to engage with others in ways that are authentic and constructive, because self-awareness creates empathy, the ability to see perspectives beyond your own. And empathy strengthens relationships, communication, and collaboration. And this is why self-awareness is not a purely internal skill, but one that ripples outward to impact every area of your life. And self-aware people tend to make better decisions, manage stress more effectively, navigate conflict with grace, and create deeper connections with others, because they operate from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Your full attention, and this clarity comes from a deep understanding of their inner world and how it interacts with the external world. Self-awareness also requires being willing to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, because growth cannot happen without honesty, and honesty about your strengths and weaknesses creates the soil for improvement. This is why self-awareness requires courage. The courage to face your fears, acknowledge your mistakes, and challenge your assumptions. This courage transforms self-awareness from a passive state into an active practice of self-improvement, because knowing yourself is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey, and each moment of self-reflection adds a layer to your understanding of who you are and who you can become. This is why cultivating self-awareness requires discipline and consistency, because your mind naturally drifts toward distraction, habit, and unconscious reaction, and without deliberate practice, self-awareness fades under the weight of daily life. It becomes essential to build rituals and habits that reinforce self-awareness, such as journaling, mindfulness meditation, self-questioning, regular reflection on your actions and choices. And self-awareness is not only about introspection, it is also about seeking feedback from others, because others often see things about us that we cannot see ourselves, and constructive feedback. When approached with openness and humility, expand your self-awareness in ways that self-reflection alone cannot, and this is why resilient self-aware people actively seek perspectives beyond their own, because self-awareness thrives in dialogue, and dialogue with others challenges assumptions, broadens understanding, and deepens insight, and feedback becomes a mirror that reflects aspects of yourself you might have missed. And this reflective process creates a cycle of growth where awareness leads to action, action leads to experience, experience leads to reflection, reflection deepens awareness, and this cycle fuels continual improvement in all areas of life. Furthermore, self-awareness is deeply tied to purpose, because when you understand yourself, you can align your goals, values, and actions in ways that create meaning and fulfillment, and self-aware people live with greater intentionality, because they act from knowledge rather than habit. This intentionality creates momentum toward growth rather than stagnation, and the more self-aware you become, the more you can fine-tune your thinking and behavior so that they align with your highest goals, and this alignment transforms your life into a coherent expression of who you are, rather than a random sequence of reactions to external circumstances. This is why self-awareness is not simply a personal skill, but a life-shaping discipline. Self-awareness ultimately transforms your relationship with yourself and the world, because when you know who you are, you stop living through unconscious patterns and begin living with conscious purpose, and this transformation changes how you approach challenges, make decisions, build relationships, and pursue growth, because you are no longer reacting to life, you are actively engaging with it. This is the power of self-awareness. It allows you to step out of autopilot, to see clearly where you are, where you want to go, what it takes to get there, and in doing so, you cultivate a mindset that is grounded in clarity, guided by values, and strengthened by self-reflection. And the result is not just personal growth, but the ability to live a life of intentionality, resilience, and fulfillment, because self-awareness is the gateway to mastering your mind, your choices, ultimately your life. Adaptability is one of the most valuable skills you can cultivate in life, because change is the only constant. The ability to adjust to shifting circumstances is what separates those who thrive from those who merely survive. Adaptability is not just about reacting to change, but about proactively preparing your mind and your life so that change becomes an opportunity rather than a threat. And developing adaptability begins with cultivating a mindset that embraces uncertainty, because uncertainty is a natural part of life, and resisting it only leads to frustration, fear, and stagnation, while learning to work with uncertainty allows you to flow with life rather than be crushed by it. And this requires flexibility in thinking, which means letting go of rigid beliefs and being willing to see situations from multiple perspectives, because flexibility allows you to respond to change in creative and effective ways rather than being trapped in outdated approaches. Adaptability also depends on resilience, because change often brings challenges, setbacks, and discomfort, and a resilient mindset helps you to face these with strength, perseverance, and clarity, transforming difficulty into growth. And adaptability is strengthened when you understand your own values and purpose, because when you know what truly matters to you, you can adapt without losing your sense of direction, and this clarity anchors you so that even as circumstances shift, your decisions remain aligned with your core principles, and adaptability becomes not just a reaction, but a strategic choice guided by awareness and intention. Furthermore, Adaptability is closely linked to learning. Change often requires acquiring new skills, perspectives, or knowledge. Those who embrace continuous learning are the ones who adapt most successfully, and learning itself is a mindset. An openness to discovery, experimentation, and improvement, and cultivating this mindset transforms challenges into opportunities for growth. Because instead of fearing change, you welcome it as a teacher, and every change becomes an occasion to expand your skills and deepen your understanding. This growth-oriented approach to adaptability transforms life into an ongoing process of evolution, where every change is a stepping stone toward greater mastery and fulfillment. This is why adaptability is not a fixed trait, but a lifelong practice that requires curiosity, openness, and the willingness to evolve. Because life is never static, and those who resist change often find themselves left behind, while those who embrace it thrive. Adaptability also requires letting go of control, because while you can influence certain aspects of your life, much of it is shaped by forces beyond your control, and the ability to focus your energy on what you can change while releasing what you cannot is a cornerstone of adaptability. Because resisting what cannot be changed wastes energy and creates unnecessary suffering, while acceptance frees your mind to focus on creative solutions and meaningful action. This balance between acceptance and action is the essence of adaptability. It is knowing when to hold steady and when to adjust, when to persist and when to pivot, and mastering this balance creates a sense of flow that makes change less intimidating and more empowering. And adaptability also requires emotional agility, because change often triggers emotional resistance, and the ability to manage your emotional responses determines whether you adapt successfully or struggle against change. And emotional agility means being aware of your emotions, understanding them without being overwhelmed by them, and choosing responses that align with your goals, values, and circumstances. And this skill transforms how you experience change, because instead of reacting with fear or frustration, you respond with clarity and purpose. And emotional agility strengthens adaptability, because it creates a mental environment where change is viewed not as a threat, but as a possibility. This shift in perspective is what transforms adaptability from a skill into a mindset. Give them a way of engaging with life that embraces uncertainty as a source of growth rather than a cause for anxiety. Furthermore, adaptability is strengthened by curiosity, because curiosity fuels exploration, creativity, and innovation. Those who are curious approach change with openness rather than resistance, and curiosity transforms challenges into opportunities to learn, experiment, expand your horizons. And adaptability fueled by curiosity becomes not just about survival, but about thriving in new and unexpected ways. And curiosity keeps your mind flexible, engaged, and ready to discover possibilities that you might not have considered otherwise. This openness to exploration creates a cycle where adaptability grows stronger with each experience. Because every time you adapt successfully, you expand your capacity to adapt again, and this creates a momentum that carries you forward through life's changes with confidence rather than fear. Adaptability also requires a willingness to experiment, to try new approaches even when the outcome is uncertain, because adaptability is not about blindly following change, but about actively shaping how you respond to it. And experimentation turns change into a creative process rather than a stressful disruption. This willingness to experiment builds confidence and resilience, because it teaches you that you are capable of navigating uncertainty and discovering solutions. Experimentation fosters innovation, because it encourages you to think outside habitual patterns and embrace novel possibilities. And this innovation becomes a powerful engine for personal and professional growth. Because adaptability is not only about surviving change, but about transforming it into progress, creativity, and transformation. And ultimately, adaptability is a mindset that transforms the way you experience life. Because when you cultivate adaptability, you shift from resisting change to engaging with it, from fearing uncertainty to welcoming possibility, from being shaped by circumstances to shaping your responses and your life. This transformation does not happen overnight. It comes from intentional practice, self-awareness, resilience, curiosity, and a willingness to experiment. And the more you develop adaptability, the more you empower yourself to navigate life's unpredictability with confidence, clarity, and creativity. And in doing so, you open yourself to a life that is not defined by rigidity, but by growth, possibility, and the freedom to evolve. This is the true power of adaptability. It is not simply surviving change, but thriving because of it, turning life's inevitable shifts into opportunities to become stronger, wiser, and more capable. And this mindset transforms every challenge into a doorway to growth, every obstacle into a lesson, and every change into a stepping stone toward a richer, more resilient, and more fulfilling life. See Chapter 15. Mastering your mindset is the ultimate goal of personal growth, because your mindset shapes your perception of the world, your ability to navigate challenges, your resilience in adversity, and your capacity to create the life you want. And a powerful mindset is not something you are born with. It is something you develop intentionally through awareness, practice, and discipline. This development begins with recognizing that your thoughts are not passive reflections of reality, but active creators of your experience. And by understanding this, you take ownership of your mental processes and the power they hold, your full attention. And mastering your mindset requires cultivating mental clarity, which comes from observing your thoughts without being controlled by them. Because clarity allows you to distinguish between constructive and destructive thinking, between empowering beliefs and limiting ones, and it creates the space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. And mental clarity is strengthened by positive self-talk, which is the practice of consciously shaping your inner dialogue to support growth, resilience, and empowerment. Because the way you talk to yourself becomes the lens through which you interpret every situation, and positive self-talk transforms your mindset by replacing doubt with confidence, fear with courage, and limitation with possibility. And this transformation is not about ignoring reality, but about choosing to focus on empowering perspectives that drive constructive action. And mastering your mindset also means developing a growth mindset. The belief that your abilities, intelligence, circumstances can be developed through effort, learning, and adaptation. Because a growth mindset turns challenges into opportunities, setbacks into lessons, and failure into feedback. And this mindset creates resilience, because it reframes obstacles as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. And mastery of mindset requires you to train your mind to embrace change rather than resist it. Welcome uncertainty as a chance to grow rather than a reason to retreat, and to view every experience as a chance to expand your skills, understanding, and capacity for growth. And this training comes through intentional practice. Because mindset is like a muscle. It must be exercised consistently through deliberate thoughts, actions, and choices. Each time you respond with a constructive perspective, rather than a reactive one, you strengthen your ability to maintain an empowered mindset, even under pressure. And mastering your mindset also means developing emotional intelligence. Your emotions play a powerful role in shaping your thinking, decisions, and actions, and emotional intelligence allows you to navigate your feelings with awareness and skill, so they work for you rather than against you. This emotional mastery is essential because a powerful mindset without emotional regulation is unstable, and emotional regulation without a constructive mindset lacks direction, and together they form the foundation of personal empowerment, enabling you to respond to life with clarity, confidence, and resilience. Furthermore, mastering your mindset requires cultivating self-discipline, because even the most positive and growth-oriented mindset will not flourish without consistent action. And self-discipline means making choices that align with your goals, even when it requires effort and sacrifice. This discipline creates the structure within which your mindset can thrive, because it transforms inspiration into sustained progress. It allows you to turn your aspirations into reality, and mastery of mindset also requires self-compassion, because the journey of growth is not perfect. Setbacks, mistakes, and failures are inevitable, and self-compassion gives you the grace to treat yourself with kindness while maintaining the motivation to improve. Transforms self-criticism into constructive feedback that fuels growth rather than undermining it. This balance of discipline and compassion creates a mindset that is both strong and flexible, capable of navigating challenge while nurturing progress. This is the heart of mastering your mindset. It is not about perfection, but about cultivating resilience, clarity, purpose, self-belief that allow you to keep moving forward despite uncertainty, fear, or difficulty. Mastering your mindset also means cultivating a sense of purpose, because purpose gives meaning to your thoughts, choices, and actions, and when your mindset is anchored in purpose, it becomes a compass that guides your decisions and fuels your perseverance. And purpose transforms challenges into meaningful experiences and gives your mindset a deeper foundation that sustains you in times of difficulty. This purpose-driven mindset creates an inner strength that transcends circumstance, because it is rooted not in external conditions, but in the meaning you bring to life. And mastering your mindset also requires continual growth, because the mind, like life itself, is never static, and every experience offers the opportunity to refine your thinking, expand your perspective, and strengthen your resilience. And this lifelong commitment to growth transforms mindset mastery into an ongoing journey, rather than a final destination. This journey is sustained through reflection, learning, self-awareness, and deliberate practice. Every moment in life is an opportunity to train your mind, and the more consistently you do this, the stronger your mindset becomes, your full attention, and the more power you have to shape your life in alignment with your highest aspirations. And ultimately, mastering your mindset is about taking full responsibility for the way you think, feel, and act, and recognizing that this responsibility is not a burden but a gift, because it gives you the power to choose your path regardless of external circumstances, to transform obstacles into opportunities, challenges into growth, and moments of uncertainty into steps toward mastery. And this is why mastering your mindset is the most powerful gift you can give yourself, because it transforms not only the way you live, the way you experience life itself, turning every situation into a chance to learn, grow, and move closer to the life you desire, and in doing so, create a life that is not shaped by fate or circumstance, but by your own conscious choice, clarity, and commitment to becoming the best version of yourself.